Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust TV. Well, one of the main issues we're going to be looking at today is actually a very interesting one. It's then going to be the issue of population. Now, in its 2022 World Population Prospects released on Monday, the United Nations projected the global population to reach 8 billion by November 15th, 2022, with China maintaining its lead. However, the annual report prepared by the Population Division of the United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs predicted that India will topple China as the world's most populous country in 2050. Now, the report, which was released in commemoration of World Population Day, shows Nigeria also moved from the 10th most populous country in 1990 with 94 million people to become the 6th most populous nation in 2020 with 216 million. Now, we'll discuss this topic in the context of harnessing the population growth for economic benefit. And right here in the studio, we have a public policy analyst, Majid Ahiru, in the studio to discuss this very important topic. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you join us.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Nigeria's population is growing exponentially, and is it all bad when we say that we are having a large population growth, or our population will exceed a certain level by a certain period of time? Let's take China, for example. China has an immensely large population. What have they been able to do to harness that population, to turn it to their own advantage? Can't we do the same?
Yeah, we're supposed to do the same, actually, because if you have a large population, it could be a blessing, it could be a curse as well. And so to turn the burden of an overpopulated country into a blessing is to invest in human development capital. But it's not just enough to do that. You have to tie your internal processes, your economic policies, your internal or local economic policies to an export competitive economy. So what China has done is that, first, we are able to forge a nation out of the multiplicity of the Chinese people. Unknown to many people, China is also a plural country like Nigeria with multiplicity of ethnicities. So what Chairman Mao was able to do was Chinese nationalism. He was able to build a Chinese nation. But unfortunately, that nation was an inward-looking one. Mao thought that China could leverage on its population and its endowment in terms of talent of the people of China and industrialize enough to become self-reliant. And so they adopted a communist model. But that didn't quite work. And so their population was becoming a burden. It became a burden. I mean, in China, it was so bad that people even starved to death. Many of his policies didn't work. The Great Leap Forward didn't work. His Great Leap Forward policies didn't work until Deng Xiaoping came in and realized that no nation can exist in isolation. You see, the world is a global competitive space for nation states. And the most prosperous nations are those that are able to position themselves properly to extract enough in the global race for resources through an export competitive economy. And so you must necessarily open up your economy to global competitiveness with an intention to have an advantage. That is, you export more and import less. So what China did from the 70s was to open up. And so they balanced the economic philosophy with a bit of capitalism while still retaining the social components of communism. So you had a state capitalist China emerging from the 70s that attracted foreign investments, but only as a means of galvanizing their own local endowment for export competitiveness. So in the period between 1978 and 1988, China became an export competitive economy that was a manufacturing powerhouse. And so to pull their large population out of poverty, the export competitive window that the Chinese government was able to evolve over time kept them busy with jobs at home. Yes, at a point they implemented the one-child policy as a means of containing what was a population explosion in China. But beyond that policy, they actually engaged their people actively in economic activities that brought in massive revenue from outside receipts. And so today China has even relaxed the one-child policy because it understands that its population is now a strength and no longer a burden.
Now, before we move on from there, you actually made a very good point with Chairman Mao and actually what he tried to do.
Yes.
But many will argue that if Mao hadn't taken those steps of the nationalism that he actually tried to do, Deng would not have had the success that he actually recorded.
Precisely.
Yeah. So when people look at what Mao did, they say, "Oh, he was a communist and he did that."
No. He did fantastically well. He laid the foundation. Communism was important at the time. At the time, it was expedient for you to have a system that guarantees an even distribution of wealth among the large population of your own people. China was a capitalist country, a Western-style capitalist country, from the time it became a republic in 1911, when the last of the imperial dynasties were, dethroned. But it created the kind of problem we have in Nigeria today. Massive poverty at the bottom, and a few people that are rich at the top. So that was the discontent that pushed a lot of people towards, the communist ideology that was championed by the likes of Mao. It served its purpose at that time. He was able to build a nation that was egalitarian, that was equal. But he's done his best. So pragmatic leadership of Deng Xiaoping came in to say, look, we've achieved this, but we cannot progress on this part any longer. So there was a balance. And that balance is essential. You cannot run a country along strict ideological lines, economically speaking. You have to have a mix of both because human nature is dynamic. So you cannot have a straitjacket rule for everybody. No, you have to have a mix. And even in the West, what they have is a mix of capitalism and socialism. That's what most people do not realize. As far as I'm concerned, every country in the world practices state capitalism, because the state plays a very fundamental role in managing issues such as population, in order not to have an explosion that will become a burden on your scarce resources. So to expand the base of your resources, you have to galvanize the population. By first building a nation, that is where Nigeria is today. We have to build a nation urgently. Otherwise, we will not be able to evolve a national agenda, a pan-Nigerian agenda, within the global framework of global competitiveness. What you have in Nigeria is your over 200 million people are still competing amongst themselves for the control of Nigeria's meager internal resources endowment.
Interesting. Those perspectives that leads us broadly into the Nigerian issue amidst all of this new, well, not exactly new revelations. I think we have known for some time that the population is exploding. Like you said, which could either be a blessing or a curse. But as you have also pointed out, my question really is, at this point in time, do we really understand the implication of this? Does it appear like the Nigerian state, or the government, as it were, understand the implication? Well, we have heard one or two government functionaries speak to this population explosion. Do we really understand what this means for us in the context of where we are right now as a nation and what we need to do going forward? Are we supposed to just allow the population to continue to grow while we think of what to do to evolve into a nation, or we do something to put that growth on hold first and then evolve into a nation and see whether we can move on? Because it does appear that we are growing far much more than we can contain as a country right now.
I think we can do both. While I may not subscribe to any policy that might impose a ceiling or restriction on procreation in modern times, but I think as a human being that is educated, and that is where education comes in, it's just logical that you have the number of children that your own income can take care of. We can start from there. I mean, nobody needs to tell you. If you know you can only take care of 1 or 2 children, 3 or 4, it's just common sense. I mean, it's in your own interest that you restrict yourself through all of the legitimate and legal methods of birth control. I mean, that are even religiously sanctioned now and culturally also ratified. So it's just common sense. However, I also think that our population is not too much for us as a country.
Okay.
We are not overpopulated. I think we can convert it to strength. But like you asked, is the government actually aware or conscious of what to do with this before it becomes a problem? Because when we go beyond this level, it might become a problem. And the answer is quite obvious. I don't think so. In fact, in Nigeria, population is a politically potent tool for negotiating power. And so you have a situation where if you do census today, and you don't have biometrics that will produce accurate figures, there's a likelihood that people inflate their own figures in their various sections of the country in order to be seen to populated to attract more government spending. So this is a fundamental problem that is at the root of the dysfunction of the Nigerian nation. You see, population and census figures are a data-based approach to development. And so you do not need to inflate your population when indeed you don't have that kind of figure, because it will not be politically relevant, but just economically important until we flip it upside down and make Nigeria a country that is built on economic common sense and not on political expediency. You keep having distortions in this manner, and people will not care about the negative consequences of population explosion, because it gives us the power to be able to negotiate political power and to decide on how to divide government patronage. And so you have a situation where the more populated you are in a polity that is driven by identity politics of ethnicity and religion, that confers on you certain advantages over others that are considered minorities. So there's a race to procreate and to expand population in the internal struggle for Nigeria's resources through political participation. And so we have to sit down, and hopefully if we have leaders that are visionary, we need to put a stop to this dysfunction. We need to begin to build a nation so that people will understand that if you procreate carelessly in a part of the country, it affects some other people in another part of the country, which also turns around to affect you in the other part of the country where this is happening. And this is the case across the country. There's no part of the country today where you don't have uncontrolled procreation. I mean, there's no part of the country. It's not peculiar to any part. So the fundamental questions of nation building must factor into this conversation as concerns Nigeria. Because if you do not build a nation out of the Nigerian country, you won't be able to harness this population towards global competitiveness. The focus of these 200+ million people will still be on how to control Nigeria's meager internal resources, which is mostly derived from crude oil revenues. And so it's important that until we have a visionary leadership that will begin to heal our cleavages, begin to, heal our fractured fault lines, and begin to build a Nigerian nation out of the multiplicity of ethnic and religious nationalities in Nigeria for the purpose of oneness and global competitiveness. I keep emphasizing global competitiveness because that is the only way we are going to convert this into economic potentials. Otherwise, they will remain a burden. It's like a household, for example, where you have, say, 5 children, and they are all grown-up adults, and they are all dependent on the meager revenues coming in from probably the estate or the family. Only. None of them is working in another establishment. None of them have their own businesses that will add to the family revenue. So you can imagine what happens when they have their own children and they should have their own grandchildren and they expand. It will lead to a civil war in that family. And so that is the case with Nigeria. There's an overfocus on the inside. What are supposed to be one people looking outside to get external sources of revenue to grow the wealth of our nation in such a manner that this population will now be complementary as a strength for economic development. So in essence, we need a national development plan that ties every part of the country together into a pan-Nigerian national agenda for export competitiveness, for global competitiveness. Otherwise, this population is going to add to the myriad of problems we're already facing because of the shrinking national cake, what you call the national cake, and the expanding population. It's actually responsible for what we're having today. Increase in corruption, insecurity, strife, and all of the issues we're having today is actually tied to a population that is growing, and the national cake that is shrinking.
When you look at the growth rate of the population, I mean, like we just heard now, in 1990 we had like 94 million
people.
Now it stands at 260. You understand? That's like in a space of 30 years.
That's over 100% increase.
Like over 100% increase. Now, if we say that happens now, 30 years from now,
so
we're looking at how much?
Maybe more than that.
Exactly. Like we're talking about 500 million people then at that particular point in time. These measures that you just talked about now, we have not started it.
At all.
When will we start?
We need to start yesterday.
When will we get to
we need to have started yesterday, really. So, and that is why 2023 election is very important. You see, we can no longer afford what has been going on since 1999 at least, when we transited from military to civil democratic rule. I've been involved in a lot of policy dialogue and desk review sessions of previous documents on national development. And I've come to the inevitable conclusion that until we fix what is wrong at the foundation of our nationhood, there is no policy that works for Nigeria, no system of government to work for Nigeria, and we'll keep having these conversations on end. And that is why we need to, as people in the media, as people that are having the platform to enlighten both the people in government and the ordinary citizens, we need to begin the process of nation building, and it's urgent. There is no nation on earth, from Europe, from America, to the Middle East, to Southeast Asia, and even from some parts of Africa. No, I've not seen any country anywhere that has developed, no matter the natural resources endowment, even no matter the human capital endowment that they have. I've not seen any country anywhere in the world that has developed without being first a nation. Irrespective of whether such a country is a democracy, it's a dictatorship, it's communist, socialist, capitalist, it's a monarchy, irrespective of the system of government. Any country you see that has made some appreciable level of development to such an extent that they could provide welfare and security for their citizens, they have been able to achieve some level of social cohesion, national unity, and nationhood. It's only when you achieve that policies can work.
Well, let me, without stopping your thoughts there, I'm trying to, as much as possible, deconstruct some of the languages that, the choice of words that you have used. When you talked about building nationhood, building national cohesion, building oneness, what does this reduce to in very practical terms? Is it just about public enlightenment, as you have acceded to with the media, or in actually providing education, integrating the poor? What exactly are we supposed to be doing to be moving towards building that nation?
Thank you very much. We need a leadership in this country that will lead Nigerians away from the shackles of tribalism, religious bigotry, and sectionalism on the basis of region of origin. We need a leadership that is self-enlightened on the fact that as Nigerians, we're not even a diverse country in this real sense of the word, and I've made this point severally. Nigeria is at best a plural country. We need a leadership that will make Nigerians understand that you are one people, irrespective of your ethnicity and religion, because you are fundamentally a monoracial Black African country, and that we need to retell our own history. And if you look at it critically, all of us in Nigeria, from the east, from the west, from the north, from the south, all of us that are indigenous people of Nigeria are all interrelated, as evidenced in the languages we speak, the similarities in our languages, culture, norms, and our general way of life. And our history suggests that there has been interactions between the peoples of Nigeria long before the first Europeans set foot in this continent. And so you have a situation where the Igbo man is as Hausa as the Hausa man is as Yoruba. You see, we must start from this perspective. And how do we practicalize and demonstrate this oneness? It is to now have a system of government that is inclusive, that is fair and just, and that does not marginalize anybody or discriminate anybody on the basis of ethnicity and religion. So, for example, you have a situation where every Nigerian that is resident anywhere in Nigeria is accorded full rights, irrespective of his ethnicity and religion or cultural occupation. Full rights. You see, a country that operates a dichotomy between so-called indigenous settlers cannot be a nation, because there are some Nigerians that are outsiders inside what is supposed to be their own country on the basis of ethnicity and region of origin. That is something we must overcome through a deliberate political process that de-emphasizes identity on the basis of ethnicity and religion, that will be backed by a purposeful administrative procedure that gives premium to state of residence over state of origin. The government needs to do all of this so that our geopolitical zones and states and federated units that are unfortunately carved along ethnic lines will now assume geo-economic status. It now becomes a geo-economic center of integration of all Nigerians whose economies are relevant to their place of residence. And the policy will begin to reflect that, as well as leadership recruitment process.
Well, that's quite interesting there, and wish we had more time to delve into these issues and, of course, dissect the population issue as it arises. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Majid Dahiru, public policy analyst. Well, those very deep insights, and we hope that when next we call you, we will be able to come and analyze some more of these issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you.